Your morning routine depends on inventions from a time we call the Dark Ages. The mechanical clock that woke you up, the eyeglasses you might be wearing, even the simple button on your shirt, all have roots in medieval workshops. We often picture this era as one of castles and knights, completely missing a quiet revolution in technology happening in monasteries and forges. This journey will reveal 25 such medieval creations that built the modern world, proving this period was anything but a technological backwater. You will discover how the internal logic of an engine was first hammered out by a blacksmith, and why a new way to fasten clothes reshaped society. How did a simple loop of metal for a rider's foot forge a new social order? And what does a tidal mill have to do with our search for renewable energy today? What one object from your daily life would you guess has a secret medieval origin? Deep within a blacksmith's workshop, amid the rhythmic hammering, a quiet revolution in motion was taking shape. It was not the sword on the anvil that mattered most, but a humble iron assembly beside it. The crank and the connecting rod solved a puzzle that had stumped ancient engineers, converting the simple, circular turn of a handle into the back and forth motion of a pump or a saw. This was a new kind of mechanical vocabulary, one that gave machines a predictable, powerful heartbeat. We see this principle laid out in beautiful, hand-drawn manuscripts, technical guides for craftsmen of the era. It was the key that unlocked automation, turning the relentless power of a water wheel into the rhythmic work of pounding a forge hammer or grinding grain without a single pair of human hands tiring. That fundamental conversion of motion, first perfected for a mill or a pump, is the very same logic that drives the pistons in a car engine today. Every time you start your car, you are relying on a principle first hammered into iron centuries ago. That same mechanical logic was soon applied to a far greater challenge than the workshop, the very soil underfoot. Northern Europe presented farmers with a stubborn problem: vast plains of thick, wet clay that the simple plows of the Mediterranean could not penetrate. These older tools merely scratched the surface, leaving the most fertile earth untouched and locked away. The solution was a technological marvel of its time, the heavy plow. This was no simple blade. It was a formidable assembly of iron, equipped with a crucial curved component called the moldboard. As the plow was dragged forward, often by a team of 8 oxen, the moldboard did something revolutionary. It sliced deep into the tough sod, lifted it, and turned it over completely. This single action aerated the dense soil, buried weeds to fertilize the earth, and opened the land to moisture and nutrients in a way never before possible. Historian Lynn White Jr. described this tool as taming the northern European wilderness, transforming what was once considered barren ground into the breadbasket of a continent. But the heavy plow's impact was more than agricultural, it was social. Such a massive tool and the team of animals it required were far too expensive for any single family to own. This necessity forged a new system of cooperative farming, where villagers pooled their resources and labor. They would work great, long strips of land together, an arrangement that fundamentally reshaped community life and patterns of land ownership. The resulting surplus of food was staggering. It fueled population growth and freed people to pursue crafts and trades in newly emerging towns. From the stubborn clay of a field to the bustling streets of a market town, the humble plow literally reshaped the landscape and society of Europe. That slow fading of the written word was a personal crisis for any scholar or craftsman. Picture a master manuscript illuminator, his life's work defined by minute details, watching the crisp lines of his art soften into an indecipherable haze as he aged. This was the quiet tragedy of failing eyesight, a premature end to a lifetime of accumulated skill. Then, in northern Italy around the late 13th century, an anonymous artisan had a brilliant idea: a pair of ground crystal lenses set into a simple frame that could be balanced on the nose. The first eyeglasses were born. This was not merely a convenience, it was a profound extension of human capability. For the first time, a person's productive life did not have to end when their natural vision began to fail. Artisans could continue their delicate work for decades longer, passing on techniques that might otherwise have been lost. Scholars and monks could continue reading and copying ancient texts deep into their later years, ensuring the survival of knowledge through generations. This simple tool effectively slowed time for the individual, preserving the most valuable resource of any society: its collective experience and wisdom. By correcting a basic human limitation, eyeglasses democratized access to the written word and to intricate craft. They allowed for a new, sustained focus that would prove essential for the close observation required by future sciences. The very act of sharpening a blurred page was a step toward sharpening our understanding of the universe itself, laying the optical foundation for the telescopes that would map the heavens and the microscopes that would reveal a hidden world. From the quiet focus of the scholar's desk, we step into the heart of the bustling town square, where a new sound began to mark the passage of the hours. It was the rhythmic chime of the mechanical clock, a sound that would fundamentally redefine humanity's relationship with time itself. Before its arrival, life was governed by the inconsistent rhythms of nature, by the shifting shadow of a sundial or the unreliable drip of a water clock in freezing weather. The mechanical clock changed everything by introducing the radical idea of measurable, equal hours, a uniform grid of time that was the same in January as it was in July. This was time divorced from the sun and the seasons, an abstract, quantifiable resource that could be managed, saved, or wasted. In monasteries, the clock's bell scheduled prayers with a new, unarguable regularity, imposing a divine order upon the day. In growing urban centers, it synchronized the activities of thousands, creating a shared rhythm for markets to open, for shifts to change, and for civic life to function. This new order fostered an unprecedented culture of punctuality and collective efficiency. The clock was far more than a timekeeper. It was the world's first truly complex precision machine. The intricate assemblies of gears and escapements crafted by clockmakers represented a pinnacle of mechanical engineering. These delicate systems of interlocking teeth and weighted drives were the direct ancestors of the complex machinery that would later power the Industrial Revolution. The clock gave us clock time, a powerful social construct that now dictates our every waking moment, from alarm clocks waking us for work to the schedules that organize our entire modern world. It taught us to see our lives not as a continuous flow, but as a series of identical, manageable segments. While the clock organized the hours of the day, another invention was redefining the work that filled them, particularly within the home. The rhythmic hum of the spinning wheel became the soundtrack of countless households, a sound that signaled a profound shift in the very fabric of society. Before its arrival in Europe around the 13th century, creating thread was a slow, painstaking process done with a hand-held spindle and distaff, a task that demanded constant attention and produced only a small amount of yarn. The spinning wheel revolutionized this ancient craft. With a simple foot pedal operating a single drive wheel, a spinner could now produce thread not only faster but with more consistent quality. This leap in efficiency was transformative, causing the cost of textiles to plummet and making linen and wool clothing more affordable and accessible to ordinary people than ever before. This was a technology that primarily empowered women, who were the traditional spinners in the medieval home. It turned a laborious chore into a more manageable and economically significant cottage industry, allowing families to produce surplus yarn for sale at local markets. The steady, reliable thread produced by these wheels wove the foundation for a new economic reality. The principles of mechanized spinning perfected in a quiet cottage, the simple coordination of wheel, spindle, and foot, became the direct mechanical ancestor of the massive spinning frames that would later thunder inside the textile mills of the Industrial Revolution. The spinning wheel did not just make thread, it spun the very fibers of economic change, weaving a new era of commerce and industry from the ground up. That secure footing in the saddle did far more than steady a rider. It altered the very balance of power on the battlefield and beyond. Before the stirrup arrived in early medieval Europe, a warrior on horseback was essentially a mobile platform for throwing javelins or swinging a sword, always one strong impact away from being unseated. The simple addition of two metal loops hanging from the saddle changed everything. Suddenly, a rider was fused with his horse, braced securely in place by his feet. This stability provided the leverage needed to withstand the incredible force of a charge while wielding a long, heavy lance tucked under the arm. The couched lance technique transformed the horseman from a skirmisher into a thunderous, living projectile, a force of shock cavalry that could shatter enemy lines on contact. This new form of combat gave birth to the archetype of the heavily armored knight, a warrior so expensive to equip and train that he represented a massive investment. The horse, the armor, the weapons, and the years of practice required to master fighting from a stabilized saddle were far beyond the means of a common farmer. This economic reality forged a new social contract, a system where land was granted in exchange for military service. A lord would provide a fief, an estate with peasants to work the land, to a knight who pledged his loyalty and his lance in return. This reciprocal arrangement, which historians call feudalism, was fundamentally built upon the military supremacy that the stirrup made possible. The knightly class, with its code of chivalry and its landed power, became the dominant political and social force for centuries, all because a simple loop of metal gave a man a stable platform from which to fight. The stirrup was a small invention with colossal consequences, proving that a secure foothold can be the foundation for an entire social order. The quiet hum of the spinning wheel was answered by the rhythmic clatter of a far more complex machine. In the weaver's workshop, the horizontal loom stood as a technological marvel, a vast wooden frame that transformed the home production of cloth into a systematic, large-scale process. Earlier vertical looms were limited, requiring a second person to help manipulate the threads and producing only narrow strips of fabric. The new horizontal loom changed everything. It integrated foot pedals called treadles, which allowed a single weaver to control the entire pattern, swiftly raising and lowering alternate sets of warp threads to create a smooth path for the shuttle carrying the weft. This simple mechanization meant one person could now produce wider, more intricate, and far more consistent textiles in a fraction of the time. The economic impact was immediate and profound. Towns famous for their weaving, like those in Flanders, became powerhouses of production, their cloth traded across the known world. This device turned fabric from a precious, handcrafted good into a commodity that could be mass-produced, fueling commerce and dressing a growing population. The skills honed at this loom, the understanding of complex mechanical sequences, and the division of labor in a workshop setting, were the direct precursors to the engineering principles behind the power looms of the 18th century. The horizontal loom did not just create cloth, it wove the very pattern for the factory system itself. Every bolt of consistent, affordable fabric was a testament to a new way of organizing work. a systematic approach that would eventually be applied to the manufacturing of nearly everything. Before the chimney, the heart of a medieval home was a literal health hazard. A central hearth burned on the floor, its smoke lazily rising to find a simple hole in the roof, filling the entire living space with a constant, eye-watering haze. Walls and ceilings were coated in soot, and the air was thick with particles that made every breath a discomfort. Then, in the 12th century, a simple architectural innovation began to clear the air, the enclosed fireplace with a built-in flue. This was not just an upgrade to the hearth, it was a quiet revolution in domestic life. By channeling smoke directly up and out of the house, the chimney transformed the indoor environment. It dramatically improved air quality, reducing the respiratory illnesses that were once a common hardship of the era. Suddenly, homes were not only warmer but genuinely healthier places to live. This single change unlocked new possibilities in architecture. With smoke no longer needing to escape through a central roof opening, builders could now construct multiple stories without filling the upper floors with smoke. This practicality made multi-story townhouses a reality, a crucial development in growing urban centers where space was at a premium. The chimney also allowed for the placement of fireplaces against outside walls, which in turn made the designation of separate, private rooms possible for the first time. The open hall where an entire household ate, worked, and slept together gradually gave way to homes with specialized spaces like private bedrooms and separate kitchens. This fostered a new culture of privacy and personal comfort within the family unit. The historian J.C. Russell rightly called the chimney one of the greatest boons to humanity, a humble invention that cleared the air, reshaped our buildings, and redefined our very idea of home. With cleaner air came clearer thinking about how we live, setting the stage for architectural designs that prioritized both health and personal space. While the horizontal loom organized the work of human hands, other machines were learning to draw power directly from the planet's own rhythms. Along sheltered coastlines and inlets, medieval engineers constructed a different kind of mill, one that did not wait for the wind to blow or the river to flow. The tidal mill was anchored to the most predictable clock on Earth, the relentless, twice-daily pulse of the ocean's tides. Its operation was a masterpiece of simple timing. Builders would erect a dam across a small estuary, creating a holding reservoir. As the tide surged in, special one-way gates called sluices would open to let the seawater flood in. Then at high tide, these gates would swing shut, trapping a vast pond of water. For the next several hours, the mill would sit in quiet anticipation, waiting for the sea to retreat. Only when the tide had fallen far enough would the miller open a water gate, releasing the pent-up reservoir to rush past the waiting water wheel. This controlled cascade drove the grinding stones with a power that was both immense and entirely free, a force borrowed from the moon's own gravitational pull. This was not just innovation, it was a form of partnership with nature. These mills provided coastal villages with a consistent, reliable source of power completely independent of the weather, turning the grinding of grain into a scheduled, predictable industry. They stand as a powerful testament to an early understanding of renewable energy, a medieval demonstration that humanity could harness the world's endless cycles without depleting them. Our modern pursuit of tidal lagoons and wave energy converters is not a new idea, but the continuation of a very old conversation with the sea, a quest to tap into the planet's own steady, powerful heartbeat. Out at sea, beneath a sky often shrouded in cloud, the ancient art of celestial navigation could fail a ship completely. The stars that guided sailors for generations were useless when hidden from view, leaving vessels at the mercy of winds and currents, often hopelessly lost just a few days from shore. Then, a small object of Chinese origin began to appear in the hands of European mariners around the 12th century. A magnetic needle floated on a piece of reed in a bowl of water. This was the first marine compass, a device that seemed to possess a kind of magic, its needle always finding its way to point unerringly north. No longer dependent on clear skies, sailors now possessed a constant, reliable guide that worked in the thickest fog or the darkest night. This simple tool transformed sea travel from a perilous gamble into a calculated endeavor. It gave captains the confidence to steer a straight course across open ocean, venturing far from the safety of coastlines. This new ability to navigate with precision was the essential key that unlocked the age of exploration. It guided the caravels of Portugal and Spain across uncharted waters, connecting continents and cultures that had developed for millennia in complete isolation. The global trade routes that followed, carrying spices, silks, and ideas, were all charted with the help of this unwavering pointer. The magnetic compass did not merely show direction, it set a new course for world history itself, weaving the separate threads of human civilization into a single, interconnected tapestry for the very first time. While the compass guided ships across vast oceans, a far more humble vehicle was revolutionizing labor back on land. The wheelbarrow solved the most universal of problems: how to move a heavy load with human strength alone. Before its widespread appearance in Europe around the 12th century, carrying stone, earth, or harvest required two people with a stretcher or a slow, cumbersome cart. The wheelbarrow changed this equation entirely, allowing a single laborer to do the work of two. Its elegant design is a masterclass in practical physics, a perfect fusion of the lever and the wheel. The single wheel at the front bears the bulk of the weight, while the two handles act as levers, allowing the user to lift and balance the load with astonishing efficiency. This was not just a tool, it was a force multiplier for the individual worker. On the construction sites of the great cathedrals and castles, the wheelbarrow was indispensable. Imagine the tons of stone and mortar needed to build a soaring Gothic vault, all moved, one load at a time, by workers with these one-wheeled carts. They navigated narrow scaffolding and cramped spaces where larger carts could never go, dramatically increasing the pace and efficiency of some of history's most ambitious building projects. The same was true in mines where they hauled ore and in monastery gardens where they moved soil and crops. This simple cart brought a new level of portability and individual effectiveness to manual labor, proving that a brilliant design can be more powerful than sheer muscle. Every time you see a modern wheelbarrow on a construction site or in a backyard garden, you are looking at a design that has carried the weight of progress for nearly 1,000 years, a quiet testament to the power of a simple idea to lighten every load. That same principle of portability would soon meet a far more transformative force of industry, the roar of the blast furnace. Deep within the forests of medieval Europe, a new kind of structure rose among the trees, a towering stone chimney designed to reach temperatures that earlier forges could scarcely comprehend. This was not a simple hearth for a blacksmith, it was a sustained, controlled inferno. The blast furnace, perfected by the 15th century, worked on a brilliant principle: a continuous blast of air, often from massive bellows driven by a water wheel, was forced into the base of the furnace. This constant oxygen supply supercharged the burning charcoal, creating heat so intense it could completely melt iron ore, separating the pure, liquid metal from the rocky slag in a process that ran for weeks at a time. The result was a torrent of molten iron that could be poured directly into molds, a technique known as casting. This produced cast iron, a material that was harder, more brittle, and could be formed into complex shapes with a speed and consistency that was previously unimaginable. Where a blacksmith might spend days hammering a single wrought iron gate, a foundry could now produce dozens of identical iron pots, firebacks, or tools in a single day. This was the true beginning of mass production for metal goods. The impact was immediate and profound. Stronger, more durable plowshares cut deeper into the earth, increasing agricultural yield. On the battlefield, the first effective iron cannons began to appear, their barrels cast as single, formidable pieces that could withstand the explosive force of gunpowder, forever changing the nature of warfare and the design of fortifications. But the blast furnace's greatest legacy was its role as the direct ancestor of the modern steel industry. It turned iron from a rare and precious material, painstakingly worked by skilled artisans, into a cheap, abundant, and commonplace building block for civilization. Every iron beam in a modern skyscraper, every steel rail on a railway, traces its lineage back to that medieval innovation. The blast furnace forged the very bones of the industrial age, proving that the power to liquefy stone and earth would ultimately build our world. Amid the clamor of the marketplace and the rhythm of the mills, a quieter, more enduring kind of power was being cultivated. In the growing cities of Europe, communities of masters and students began to form guilds of the mind, securing royal charters that recognized their right to govern their own affairs. This was the birth of the university, a self-governing community of scholars that created a standardized system for higher learning for the first time since the ancient academies. In places like Bologna, Paris, and Oxford, these institutions established a structured curriculum, a set course of study that moved from the foundational liberal arts to advanced degrees in law, medicine, and theology. This was not merely a school, it was an ecosystem for knowledge, one that granted recognized degrees and created a new, educated professional class. The university became the primary engine for producing the lawyers who administered kingdoms, the doctors who advanced understanding of the human body, and the theologians who shaped philosophical thought. It established a revolutionary framework for academic freedom, protecting the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, often insulated from the immediate demands of the church or the crown. This was the institutionalization of the life of the mind, a space where debate and disputation were not just allowed but required. The collective work of these scholars, copying, commenting on, and preserving ancient texts, ensured that the wisdom of the past would not be lost. This organized, sustained pursuit of knowledge, protected by the walls of the university, created the critical mass of learning and the trained intellects that would ultimately light the fire of the Renaissance. From the roaring heat of the blast furnace, we turn to a revolution stitched into the very fabric of daily life, one so small you likely fastened one this morning. The common button seems almost too trivial to mention, yet its arrival in 13th century Europe quietly unraveled an entire world of how people dressed. Before this, clothing was largely a matter of draping and wrapping, secured with cumbersome belts, tricky pins, or simple ties. These methods were functional but limited, often creating loose, flowing garments that gaped open and did little to keep out the bitter cold of a northern winter. The button, used in tandem with its ingenious partner, the buttonhole, changed everything. This was a fastening system that was secure, adjustable, and could be placed with precision along a seam. For the first time, clothing could be cut to follow the contours of the human body, pulled snugly across the chest or closed tightly at the wrist. This new, tailored fit was a revelation in personal comfort and protection from the elements. But the impact went far beyond mere warmth. This technical leap made possible the development of complex, fitted fashion. A person's wealth and status could now be displayed through the cut of their tunic or the number of expensive buttons adorning their sleeve, moving beyond simple fabric quality to a new language of personal style. The humble button, by holding pieces of cloth together in a new way, also helped hold together a new concept, the dressed individual. It signaled a shift from clothing that simply covered the body to attire that expressed it, stitching the first threads of a modern sense of self. Rising high above the flat plains of the Netherlands and the English countryside, the vertical windmill became a landmark of medieval ingenuity. Its great sails, catching the slightest breeze, turned a cap that could rotate to face the changing wind, a feature that set it apart from the fixed horizontal mills of Persia. This was not a simple machine. It was a complex wooden engine of gears and driveshafts that translated the wind's horizontal push into the rapid, vertical spin of a grinding millstone. For communities living far from fast-flowing streams, this was a revolution in energy independence. A village with a windmill was no longer bound by the geography of rivers. It could grind its grain and even power sawmills using the invisible, ceaseless resource of the air itself. These structures were the skyscrapers of their era, towering symbols of a community's wealth and technical prowess, their rhythmic creak and groan a soundtrack of progress. The engineering knowledge gained from building and maintaining these giants, from crafting their intricate wooden gear trains to managing the immense stresses on their frames, was a direct school for mechanics. The principles of power transmission and gear reduction mastered in the windmill's wooden heart would later be translated into iron and steel, becoming the fundamental mechanics of the factories that would follow. This capture of the wind's energy was indeed a breath of fresh air for industry, a first step toward harnessing the planet's atmospheric forces that continues today with every turn of a modern turbine's blade. The rhythmic clatter of iron on cobblestones signaled another quiet revolution, one that walked on four legs. The nailed iron horseshoe was a simple solution to a problem that had limited the use of horses for centuries: the constant wear and tear on their hooves from hard or rocky ground. Without protection, a horse's hoof would split and crumble, rendering the animal lame and useless after only a short period of demanding work. The practice of nailing a shaped iron plate directly to the hoof wall, a craft perfected in the early Middle Ages, changed everything. This durable cap absorbed the shock of every step and prevented the hoof from cracking, effectively doubling or even tripling a horse's working life. Suddenly, a single horse could pull a heavy plow or a laden cart for years, not just months. The economic impact was immediate and profound. In agriculture, a reliable draft horse meant more land could be cultivated and harvests transported more efficiently. For merchants, it meant trade caravans could travel longer distances over rougher roads, carrying heavier loads of goods. The value of a horse transformed overnight, turning it from a semi-disposable asset into a long-term investment that underpinned the entire economy. This new reliance created an essential profession in every village and town: the farrier. This skilled blacksmith specialized in the anatomy of the horse's hoof and the art of hot shoeing, fitting each shoe perfectly to the individual animal. But the horseshoe's influence extended far beyond the farm and marketplace. On the battlefield, the warhorse shod with iron could charge with confidence over difficult terrain, its footing secure and its endurance vastly extended. This durability made heavy cavalry an even more formidable and reliable force, the bedrock of medieval armies. That simple piece of curved metal did not just protect a hoof, it put a spring in the step of all medieval commerce and conquest, expanding the horizons of what was possible to transport, to farm, and to reach. That quest for purity was not just about metals or medicine, but also about liquid itself. In the quiet stillness of a monastery's workshop, an alchemist would carefully heat a fermented liquid in a sealed vessel called a cucurbit. As it simmered, the vapors would rise into the coiled tube of the alembic, where they cooled and condensed back into a new, startlingly clear liquid. This was the art of distillation, a process that captured the very spirit or spiritus of the original substance. The result was a potent liquid fire they called aqua vitae, the water of life. Initially, this powerful spirit was treasured as a medicine, a miraculous concentrate believed to cure ailments and prolong life itself. Monks and apothecaries carefully guarded their recipes, infusing these early alcohols with herbs and botanicals to create curative tonics. But the true power of this discovery went far beyond the monastery walls. The ability to distill, to separate and purify the components of a liquid is one of the foundational acts of modern chemistry. It is a process of analysis and isolation, a method for obtaining a pure substance from a complex mixture. This very same principle, first perfected for creating spirits, is what allows us today to produce the essential oils that define the perfume industry, to create the pure chemical reagents that drive pharmaceutical research, and to refine crude oil into the gasoline that powers our world. The alembic still was more than a tool for making drink. It was a key that unlocked the hidden essence of matter, proving that within the ordinary often lies an extraordinary potential waiting to be revealed. Gaze upon the soaring height of a Gothic cathedral, and you will see the Flying Buttress, an architectural marvel that allowed walls to be filled with vast stained glass windows. This external support system redirected the weight and thrust of the vaulted stone roof to the ground, making previously impossible structures a reality. It was a brilliant solution to an engineering problem that also created an aesthetic of lightness and grandeur. The cathedral became a Bible in stone, using light and space to inspire awe. This stone skeleton redefined the limits of architecture. This architectural leap allowed humanity to reach closer to the heavens. The sheer ambition of these cathedrals created a crisis of physics. Builders wanted to push walls to unprecedented heights and crown them with vast, vaulted stone ceilings, but the outward thrust of all that weight was immense. Solid stone walls built thick enough to contain this force would have been dark, windowless fortresses, blocking the very light they sought to celebrate. The Flying Buttress was the elegant answer, a stone arm that leaped from a massive external pier to meet the high wall at its most vulnerable point. It caught the roof's thrust and channeled it safely down and away from the building, turning a wall from a load-bearing necessity into a delicate skin. This external skeleton of stone meant the walls were no longer needed for primary support, allowing them to be pierced with enormous windows that filled the interior with a kaleidoscope of colored light. The engineering was a triumph, but the effect was spiritual. For a population where many could not read, these windows told the stories of their faith in luminous, jewel-toned glass, transforming the physical space into an experience of the divine. The Flying Buttress did not just hold up a roof, it lifted the human spirit, proving that the most practical solutions can also be the most beautiful, and that reaching for the heavens begins with a solid foundation on the ground. High above the muddy ground of a cathedral worksite, a giant wooden wheel turned with the steady, trudging steps of human legs. The Treadmill Crane was the medieval answer to lifting the impossible, a machine where muscle and mechanics merged into a single, powerful engine. A worker, sometimes called a squirrel for his endless pacing, would walk inside the large, hollow wheel, his weight and motion causing the entire drum to rotate. This rotation wound a rope around a central axle, hoisting stones and timbers that no group of men could lift by hand alone. It was a brilliant application of simple physics, where the crane's internal gearing translated the slow, steady walk of a person into the tremendous pulling force needed to raise a multi-ton block of quarried stone hundreds of feet into the air. This was not about replacing human effort, but about amplifying it to a previously unimaginable degree. The cathedrals that scrape our skylines today were built stone by stone, each one likely lifted into place by the relentless, climbing steps of a person inside a wheel. This machine represents a pivotal shift in our relationship with construction, a moment where the sheer ambition of a project demanded a new kind of partnership between human endurance and mechanical advantage. The rhythmic creak of the great wheel was the sound of a society learning to build bigger than itself, a testament to what collective effort, channeled through intelligent design, could achieve. Every soaring arch and fortified wall from that era stands as a monument not just to faith or power, but to the quiet revolution of the crank and the gear, proving that the true engine of history is often a combination of ingenuity and the simple, persistent power of a single step. A game of carved ivory pieces on a 64-square battlefield was schooling the medieval elite in the art of power. Chess, which journeyed from India through the Islamic world to the courts of Europe, did not arrive as a finished product. It was during the Middle Ages that its rules were refined into the game we know today, its pieces taking on the distinct identities of the society that embraced it. The king, the queen, the bishop, and the knight were not just game tokens, they were a mirror held up to the feudal world, a symbolic representation of the social order and its hierarchies. This was far more than a simple pastime. It was a rigorous mental training ground. Young nobles learned to think several moves ahead, to anticipate an opponent's strategy, and to sacrifice lesser pieces for a greater strategic advantage. These were not abstract skills, they were the very essence of military command and political governance. The ability to see the entire board, to understand the interplay of different forces, was a direct lesson in statecraft. But perhaps the most profound innovation was the quiet standardization of the game's rules across the continent. As chess spread from Italy to France to England, its evolving regulations became one of the first examples of a complex system being codified and shared widely across different cultures. This created a common intellectual language for the aristocracy, a shared framework for competition, and thought that transcended local dialects and borders. The game became a powerful metaphor for life itself, a reminder that every decision has consequences and that victory often goes not to the strongest but to the most foresighted. In teaching nobles how to maneuver on a checkered board, chess was quietly preparing them to navigate the far more dangerous and complex board of European politics. A life's work of scholarship could be lost in a slow, frustrating blur. The fine brushstrokes of an illuminator, the precise penmanship of a scribe, all threatened as the eyes aged and the world's sharp edges softened. But the invention of eyeglasses was only the beginning. By the 14th century, a crucial refinement emerged: convex lenses ground specifically to correct presbyopia, the farsightedness that comes with age. These were the first dedicated reading glasses, a tool that did more than just aid vision. It actively fought against the erosion of human knowledge. For an aging monk painstakingly copying a classical text, these spectacles meant he could continue his work not for just a few more years, but for decades. The intricate diagrams in a medical manuscript could be reproduced with accuracy, their vital information preserved for future generations. This was a profound extension of individual productivity that, on a societal scale, became a bulwark against cultural loss. The collective memory of a civilization held in its handwritten books was no longer at the mercy of the natural decline of a single scholar's eyesight. This personal empowerment against a universal human experience quietly amplified the intellectual capital of entire communities. The flame of learning, once so fragile, could now burn steadily for a lifetime, passed from one clear-sighted generation to the next. With a written word sharp and accessible for longer, the very potential for deeper thought and more complex innovation was magnified, proving that a simple lens could help bring an entire era into clearer focus. That same clarity of vision now required a new surface to write upon, one as revolutionary as the lens itself. For centuries, the written word was trapped on a canvas of animal skin. Parchment and vellum were incredibly durable, but their cost was staggering. A single Bible required the skins of more than 200 sheep, making books a treasure locked away in monastery and royal libraries. Then came the quiet transformation of paper. Though invented in China, it was medieval Islamic and later European engineers who truly unleashed its potential by harnessing the power of the water wheel. They established water-powered paper mills where a mechanical trip hammer would tirelessly pound rags and plant fibers into a soft pulp. This pulp was then scooped onto wire screens and dried into uniform, blank sheets. This was the birth of mass production for the written word. The cost of a piece of paper plummeted to a fraction of a comparable piece of parchment, turning a luxury item into a commonplace commodity. Suddenly, merchants could afford to keep detailed ledgers of their transactions. Students could own their own notebooks. Writers could draft and redraft their thoughts without considering the exorbitant price of their canvas. This was a democratization of information as profound as the Internet's arrival centuries later. But paper's greatest role was yet to come. It was the essential prerequisite, the blank stage waiting in the wings for the next great revolution. Without this cheap, abundant, and uniform surface, Gutenberg's printing press would have had nothing to print on. The explosion of literacy and new ideas we call the Renaissance was built on a foundation of rag paper. It became the universal medium for the modern mind, the quiet partner to every world-changing idea that was soon to be written upon it. That simple sheet of paper was waiting for a new kind of language, a numerical one that could unlock the full potential of commerce and science. Try to calculate a merchant's profit using Roman numerals. The year is 1299, and you need to multiply 487 by 23. With only I, V, X, L, C, D, and M at your disposal, the process becomes a convoluted nightmare of abacus beads and scratched parchment. This was the daily reality before Europe embraced the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. Its adoption was a revolution in thought as profound as the invention of the printing press. The system's core genius lay in two simple but earth-shattering ideas: place value and the concept of zero. A single digit's meaning now depended on its position, so a 3 in one column meant 3, but in the next column it meant 30. This positional notation made complex multiplication and division not just possible, but practical for anyone to learn. And the inclusion of zero, a symbol for nothing that represented a powerful something, provided the essential placeholder that made the entire elegant structure work. It was the keystone in the arch of modern mathematics. The champion of this system in the West was the Italian mathematician Leonardo Fibonacci, who saw its power during his travels in North Africa. His book, Liber Abaci, or the Book of Calculation, was a practical manual that demonstrated to merchants and bankers how these new numbers could streamline their accounting, calculate interest, and convert currencies with breathtaking speed compared to older methods. This was not an abstract academic exercise. It was a tool that directly amplified the velocity of commerce. With reliable arithmetic, banking families could manage vast international networks of credit and debt. Scientists could formulate precise laws of physics and accurately chart the movements of planets. The system became the silent, universal language behind the development of double-entry bookkeeping, the framework for all modern finance, and the bedrock of algebra, the branch of mathematics that would later describe the very laws of the universe. The quiet adoption of these 10 digits and a circle did more than just make math easier. It calculated the very path to our modern world, proving that the most powerful revolutions often begin not with a bang, but with a new way to count. Long before the great wooden sails of European mills began to turn, another design was already spinning in the desert winds. The vertical axis windmill, known in Persia as the painmone, was a machine of elegant simplicity. Its design featured a central vertical shaft with sails made of bundled reeds or cloth that caught the wind from any direction. Unlike the later horizontal mills that had to be painstakingly turned to face the breeze, this early spinner welcomed the wind from every quarter. It was a solution born of necessity in arid landscapes where flowing water for mills was scarce, but the wind was a constant, powerful presence. These devices were not about maximum efficiency, but about reliable function. They demonstrated the core principle that the wind's kinetic energy could be captured and converted into the mechanical work of grinding grain or drawing water from deep wells. This was a crucial first chapter in a global story of innovation. The painmone and its cousins show that the same fundamental challenge, harnessing natural power, was being solved in parallel by different cultures with the materials and insights they had at hand. Their quiet, persistent spin in the deserts of the Middle East and the plains of Central Asia represents one of humanity's earliest and most enduring partnerships with an invisible force. These were the first tentative drafts of an idea that would one day power nations, a clear signal that our modern quest for renewable energy is not a new ambition, but the revival of a very ancient conversation with the planet. Amid the chaos of a medieval battlefield where armor concealed the face and dust clouded the air, a brilliant flash of color could mean the difference between life and death. The vibrant designs emblazoned on shields and surcoats were not mere decoration. They were a sophisticated visual language, a system of instant identification we now call heraldry. Born in the 12th century from the practical need to distinguish fully armored knights, this art form quickly evolved into something far greater than pageantry. It became a medieval barcode, a code of symbols that communicated identity, lineage, and allegiance at a single glance. A knight bearing a golden lion on a red field was not just a man, he was a representative of a specific family, a bearer of its history and its sworn loyalties. This system transformed the battlefield into a legible map of social and political relationships, where alliances and rivalries were painted in stark, symbolic terms for all to see. But heraldry's role extended far beyond the clash of arms. It was a legal signature stamped on wax seals to authenticate documents and grant authority to proclamations. It fostered a powerful sense of family pride and chivalric identity, tying individual honor to a collective legacy that spanned generations. The rules governing this visual language, known as the law of arms, were remarkably precise, dictating everything from color combinations to the specific meanings of its menagerie of creatures and objects. A lion symbolized courage, an eagle represented strength and leadership, and a tower could denote a family's defensive prowess. This codification created a unique and enduring form of symbolic communication that transcended local dialects and literacy. It painted a clear, hierarchical picture of the social order, visually reinforcing the complex web of obligations and power that defined feudal society. The coat of arms was more than a family logo. It was a portable piece of identity, a claim to status, and a silent proclamation of one's place in the world. Beyond the castle walls and the endless furrows of the manor, a new kind of power was taking root in the crowded, bustling streets of the town. Here, the air itself seemed to carry a different promise, captured in a famous medieval saying that the very air of a town could make a man free. This freedom was not abstract, it was a legal reality forged on parchment. A town could secure a royal charter, a document that transformed it from a simple settlement into an incorporated borough. This charter was a revolutionary invention in social organization, granting the town the right to govern its own affairs, to hold its own courts, and to manage its own taxes. For the first time, a community could exist as a legal entity separate from the feudal chain of knights, lords, and kings. A merchant or a master craftsman living within its walls was no longer bound by the traditional obligations to a local lord. He did not have to work the lord's land or surrender a portion of his harvest. His labor and his profits were his own. This legal autonomy fostered an entirely new social class, the bourgeoisie, a word that literally means the townspeople. These were the shopkeepers, the weavers, the metalworkers, and the traders whose wealth came not from land, but from commerce and skilled craft. The incorporated town became a magnet for ambition, drawing individuals seeking a life built on merit and contract rather than birth and service. Within these urban centers, guilds regulated quality and training, markets buzzed with goods from distant lands, and new ideas circulated as freely as currency. This model of urban self-government, born from a need for commercial efficiency and civic order, is the direct ancestor of the modern city corporation. It was in these chartered towns that the seeds of a new economic and political world were sown, creating a social unit whose influence would eventually challenge the very foundations of feudal power and become the primary engine of change for centuries to come. From the mechanical heartbeat of the clock to the clear vision granted by spectacles, these 25 medieval creations reveal an era that was anything but dark. They were a crucible of quiet, world-changing innovation, where solutions forged in workshops and monasteries built the very framework for our modern existence. This was not a time of crude precursors, but of foundational developments that reshaped agriculture, science, warfare, and the intimate details of daily life. Our journey through this ingenuity serves as a powerful reminder that progress is rarely a single, blinding flash of light. It is most often a cumulative process, a slow and steady dawn built upon the clever, practical solutions of countless forgotten minds. The next time you check the time on your phone, fasten a button on your coat, or lose yourself in the pages of a book, take a moment to remember the medieval craftsmen. Their legacy is quite literally in your hands. Let this new perspective on the past inspire you to look more carefully at the hidden innovations of our own time, the quiet revolutions happening all around us. If this exploration has changed your view of history, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more journeys into the forgotten corners of our shared past.